Week 4 was the last week of Figure Drawing 1, so I completed Unit 1 of the Solo Artist curriculum. Since week 2, however, I have been introducing some elements of Unit 2, Perspective 1, to my training with drawbox exercises, as this ellipses on planes that I used as a warm-up on day 1. I also read and watched videos on drawbox and worked on some plotted and rough perspective. Later I moved on to some gesture drawings. Lots of 1-minute drawings. Some have more of a warm-up feel, but this one down here, I like that the lines are clean and I can understand it. In this next page, I like the break on this hand, and in general I think with a few lines I get to understand what is happening in the poses. This 2-minute one I don't like. I find it stiffer than the previous ones. The next page has more 2-minute poses. I think they are better. I got happier finally with my 5-minute poses as well, and I'm feeling happier about gesture sessions. I worked for approximately 2 hours on day 1, considering reading and watching videos for drawbox and doing some exercises as well this gesture session. I also did some silly sketches for myself. Day 2, I studied Lumis. I had watched Proko's proportion video last week, and I hadn't taken notes or worked on it in any way. So I decided to complement that with some Lumis study and to get some of this skeleton-like figures down on paper, and I think approaching one issue in different ways can be very helpful. I later moved back to drawbox, did some warm-ups, and watched the rotated box video. I started with fine liners and following the drawbox's method, but soon I decided that this exercise was not going to be for submission, so I would rather draw it with colored pencils and be able to better visualize the boxes. I had already done this exercise before, but 3 years ago, and I hadn't enjoyed the process very much. So I wanted to make this experience more profitable for my learning. I actually like the side that I worked on by myself in colors better. I sometimes get confused with all the construction lines of boxes and everything in black, so seeing and understanding with the colors was helpful to me. I did some warm-up as well. Still on day 2, I found Proko's Drawing with Force series with Mike Matesi. This is episode 1, but in Proko's channel there are 3 episodes of Drawing with Force with Mike Matesi, and they are excellent. Again, with these episodes, I worked by first attempting to capture a pose myself and later only copying the instructor's drawing. I found force difficult at first, but hugely inspiring. You can see here me drawing a pose and probably getting the gist of it, but also getting it rather boxy. And then here is Matesi's drawing, and it just oozes fluidity and power and confidence with enviable lines. Of course, I wasn't thinking I would just draw with force from the get-go. I was happy with the general depiction of the pose, but this makes me want to be more expressive. One thing I haven't mentioned is that before I was mostly drawing with mechanical pencils and some instances with colored pencils that did not work super well on camera. But with force, I switched to a 2B pencil and I tried to get a stronger mark on the paper. I also wasn't aiming for the same economy of lines that I was trying to do before. Matesi does leave more marks on paper than Proko, although he of course does it expertly and to great results, and I am just starting to learn it. But the point is, the Force series started to change a bit my approach to gesture. Again, me, and then Matesi's much more fluid pose. Day 3, I went back to the Force series. Again, I was giving myself 2 minutes, and then I would watch the pose, copy, and write notes. Like here, go from big to small. In this case, it was Diego Lucia, I'm not sure, who drew this pose, but the others were all Matesi. Again, 2 minutes. I tried to simplify things a lot, and at this point I was also trying to incorporate some of the force principle into the drawings. I like the leg with the force lines, this big simple line. I also like that I had gotten this ass here, the pillar of the arm, So I had captured the pose with what I had learned mostly from Proco and a bit from Michael Hampton, but also trying to get some of the force flavor into it. There's no comparison to the simplicity and power in how Matazzi distills this pose, but I was happy with my attempt and with starting to learn to draw with force. Same here, I find that my drawings get a little messier, but what force brings is extremely positive. Again, I think in 2 minutes, I captured the pose. It is not force, but getting some inspiration from force was productive for my drawings. Again, me, 2 minutes, and then a copy of Matazzi's drawing. As usual, mine could have more of a lean, but I am happy with this 2-minute gesture. This was a very productive drawing session for me. This guy took 3 minutes. My timer went off at 2, but I hadn't finished him and I gave myself an extra minute so I could take my best shot at it. And I certainly like the result. Mike's was a lot more abstract, and I'm sure it took him less time. I love his lines, but force is still a little hard for me. This is from the second episode from the series in Proco's channel. It was about sculpting form with marks, hatchings, and or wrapping ellipses. They really emphasize also avoiding symmetry and playing with curved and straight lines. On day 4, I watched episode 3 from the series. Again, my drawing before Matazzi's. My drawings feel messier, but I like how force asks us to be bolder with our marks, and I think ditching the mechanical pencil and getting a softer pencil helps too. As this lady's pose was the same one he had used in a previous video, I just drew along with him. This next pose is from Matazzi's YouTube channel. I stopped the video and I drew this man, and only after saw Matazzi's version, which is here. I like mine. I feel we can understand the pose, and I feel the force drawings are bolder than the ones I did before having seen force. I wanted to see how much of what I had learned with force would carry on to use in gesture sessions. So I worked on those 1-minute poses. 1-minute poses are challenging to me, but I think force might have helped me to be a little bolder. I carry on with another 1-minute pose and finish the day with this 2-minute pose. Day 5 was a slow day. I had a small surgery and a sick child at home, so I did not draw much. This page was all my work for that day. A 1-minute and a 30-second pose by my child, and one 1-minute drawing from a new Masters Academy session. It was very little, but considering the day I had, I am very happy I managed to get this done. I like this 1-minute pose. Of course, I can see how I could improve it, but for 1 minute, I am fine with it. Day 6, I went straight on a new Masters Academy session. Those were 2-minute poses. I tried to first get the flow of the pose and then use the rest of the time to mark some details. I can definitely think of many improvements as I look at those pictures now. But as I was approaching the end of this figure drawing unit, I could certainly appreciate how beneficial this study had been to me. This 5-minute pose wasn't as good as I hoped it could be, so that was a little disappointing. But some days and some poses are better than others, and the reality is that I don't see improvement with every drawing, but I can see improvement comparing the beginning of this unit. So I looked for more videos of force. I found a Strathmore series with Matazzi that turned out to be not as good as his series for Proco's channel, even if it was similar in some ways. In this series, however, he draws with waxy crayons, so I tried to work with the crayons to get the big, intentional and confident lines Matazzi talks about. I first warmed up with some drawbox inspired ellipses, and I actually enjoy drawing with crayons. I don't normally do so, but changing mediums is fun. I also wrote some notes. Start with hierarchy, from big to small, stay loose. I did some exercises, how to break the lines, wrote notes, but I did not like this series very much. Day 7 was the last day. I was both happy and sad. It was the end of figure drawing. I decided to watch the Bean video again. I would give myself 30 seconds to draw the bean, like Proko. Then I would give myself 2 or 3 minutes to finish the entire pose after the initial bean. And then I would copy Proko's beans. I feel like I was getting both the beans and the poses. I like those exercises. They help me understand that, yeah, I got the beans and I can build on top of them. In this drawing, I have a note that my bean was okay, but it could have had more of an overlap and gotten smaller on the bottom. It's again the issue I have with foreshortening, and also why Proko says that one has to draw an extreme version of the bean. Here also I got the pose, but Proko says make the twist bigger than in the pose, because when we build on top of it, we lose a bit of that movement. And I haven't got to the extreme. I was really happy with this exercise and getting the pose, even if I do not exaggerate as much as Proko when getting the beans down. And getting the beans made room for me to find discomfort in other areas, as knees. I also like this pose. I like that I got the bean and that the drawing of the pose looks like the pose. I finished the video writing some notes on beans and leaning and twists, and I continue drawing some more examples from Proko's channel. Yet more beans, and they were all done correctly, and the poses built on them were fine as well. Even this super twisty last one. I finished the day with some 1-minute poses from No Masters Academy, but I was tired and I wasn't really feeling them, so I stopped there. Again, both sad and happy to be finishing this unit. I am sure there's a lot of progress to be made, and there will be more units on figure drawing and anatomy. But next week starts drawbox time with perspective 1. And I don't want to abandon figure drawing entirely, so I'll try to incorporate some of the gesture sessions into my training, just to keep practicing a bit. So this is the end for this week and this unit. Next week it is perspective 1, and I hope to see you then. Thank you for watching. Bye.